Boro faced their second tough trip in the Championship so far this season. Last weekend it was the Den. This weekend it's Carrow Road. What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Project Boro preview show where we look ahead to every single Boro game, of course. And this weekend, Boro face another difficult task in the Championship. We head down to Norfolk, I think, to face Norwich City at Carrow Road. Another really tough test in what has been a tough start for Boro, on paper at least. But of course, so far, we've somehow managed to turn the tables and we've won 2 of our opening 2 games. Can we make it 3 from 3 and get a win at Carrow Road? One of the, again, like the Den, one of the most difficult places, I would say, to go in the Championship. So today, as always, in the preview, we're going to be looking ahead at Norwich. We're going to look at their team, what's been happening in the summer, what's been happening so far this season. Look at the Boro team, predict the Boro team, before, of course, then predicting the scoreline. So, Norwich City, I think there's a lot of similarities between them and us, if I'm honest. I think, although they are a side who I think have probably invested more as it stands, possibly invested better, I just have a feeling, and I said this in my 1-24 predictions I did for the Championship, I've just got a feeling Norwich will sneak into the playoffs this season. I always do have a feeling about Norwich. I really fancy them and I really rate Liam Manning, but there is still a lot of transition, a lot of change there, and a bit like Boro, they are going to take a little bit of time, I think, to get everything settled down and moving in the right direction. Of course, as I say, the Hostorup experiment was cut short last season, which was a bit of a surprise, but Norwich were quick to put a stop to that, and they've, of course, brought in a more established and experienced Championship manager in being Liam Manning, who took Bristol City, of course, to the playoffs last season. I think he's a great manager. I think he's a underrated manager and one that with the right tools can certainly do great things in this league. But as well as that, they've also had a huge turnover of players. Now, I don't know if these numbers are exactly right because some might have been the end of loans, some might have been releases. I'm not too sure, but I think they've made somewhere in and around 10, 11 signings. They've probably lost just as many players as well. They've sold an absolute fortune's worth of talent. Jonathan Rowe went to Marseille for around 12 to 13 million pounds. They also lost Borja signed, so I think still was the top goal scorer in the Championship last season. They've lost him. He's gone to Porto for around about the same fee as Rowe, maybe a little bit less. But then they've also, despite recouping a 20 plus million pounds in sales, they've also spent in and around or just over £20 million as well. Now, I might butcher his name, but Matthias Kvistgaarden is their marquee signing, a centre-forward from Bromby, who they've signed for £7 million. They've also brought in Papa Amadou Diallo, another player they've spent a bit of money on from Metz. Harry Darling is another player they've brought in from Swansea, who I think might have been a free agent. So they've made some pretty impressive signings this summer, I've got to be honest. And they've invested a lot of money into this team. So they've sold a lot, they've invested a lot of change, a lot of transition. But still, I fancy them, even though it might take them a bit of time to get going, to be one of the teams who are up there this season. Now, in terms of this season, so far, they've had a mixed start, but I would say overall a decent one, given all the change. They did open the Championship, of course, with a 2-1 defeat at home as well to Millwall, the team we've of course just went and beat. So you'd say by logic that means Boro should have the upper hand over Norwich, but that's not how the Championship works, of course. The very team we've just beat Norwich on the opening day, but they have bounced back from that with 2 wins, 1 in the Cup winning away at Watford and 1 in the league last weekend when they went to Pompey and won, which is not an easy place to go in the Championship and win by any stretch. So I think it's a decent start for them, and as we know, at home they are mostly a formidable outfit. I think up until last season we were almost the first team to win there in a calendar year, I think it was. We obviously went there last season 3-1 up, absolutely blew it. At the time, Norwich were absolutely incredible at home, so I always look at Carrow Road as a very, very tough place to go. So that in itself will be a test, but I think, of course, of all the players that they've got, taking a closer look at their starting 11, the biggest bit of transfer business, I guess, for Norwich is one that's not even happened yet, and that is that they still have Josh Sargent. Now, he almost looked like he was gone a few weeks ago. Was it Wolfsburg he might have been linked with, if I remember right? I can't quite recall why that fell apart late on in the deal, but he has started the season very, very well. 3 goals in 3 games. He's got 1 in each of the league games. He got 1 in the cup game as well. You could say, with confidence, if stays fit for the full season, the best centre-forward in the Championship. I would say, I'm one of the few that could probably guarantee you 25 to 30 goals. So he undoubtedly is Norwich's best player. And again, I think when you're looking at parallels between the two teams, I think their hopes and expectations and maybe the rest of their transfer window might hinge on what happens with Josh Sargent in the same way that it probably does with Boro and Hayden Hackney. So it could be a case of they'll be desperate to hold on to him. Of course they will, just like we are Hayden Hackney. If we don't, we'll have money to invest, as they will with Josh Sargent, but they're both players that you could say are irreplaceable at this level. So he is definitely one of their biggest star players, but they've got fantastic players across the pitch. Harry Darling has had a good start there. I think he's a very good pickup on a free at the heart of their defence. You'll notice they play the same as Boro, a 3-4-2-1. We're sort of matched up, you could say. So it could be a blow-for-blow sort of game. Their back three, I think, is just as solid as ours. Cordoba is a good player. Darling's a good player. Don't know too much about their goalkeeper and right centre-half. They've got a good midfield too. Although I do think there's possibly... that could be an area where Boro might have the upper hand if Hackney and Morris are in there together. Nunez did go off, I believe, in their last game against Pompey. Don't know if that was precautionary or if he might be fit for the game. He could be fit, he could start, he might be on the bench, I don't know, but he did go off with some form of an injury in their last game, and he is another big player in the midfield who I think has already gotten a goal contribution or two to his name this season. If he's not in the midfield, that could be a huge area for Boro to hopefully get the better of. Of course, they have wing-backs just like Boro. Jack Stacey's on their right-hand side. It'll be interesting to see how he goes up against Sammy Silvera. Of course, when one comes forward, there'll be space in behind for the opposition's wing-back. So that'll be an interesting tussle on both sides. They played Diallo on the left of their wing-backs against Pompey. Of course, we'll have Callum Britton defending down that side. So it'll be interesting to see who gets the better of the game in terms of midfield and the wing-backs going down the side. And just like us, they have 2 10s in behind their striker. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name. Is it Cernach? It's a very strange name. As well as Macondes, who was playing behind Josh Sargent. So they've got a decent front three as well. Boro's might move around, might change depending on fitness and injuries. And of course, the key man, Josh Sargent, is up front. So it's going to be interesting to see how things go between both sides, playing exactly the same formations. I do think they've probably gotten a more settled front line, I would say, that's clicking. They've got a striker that's scoring goals at the moment, so they may be edge Boro in that area of the pitch for now. Midfield and wing-backs could be an interesting one, and I think we've both got 2 very, very solid defences as well. Looking at what Boro's 11 might look like, again, I don't think there's too much room for change here. I know Boro have brought in players this week and might bring in even more. I'm not sold that any of them will be in the starting 11, but I think the back 5 will stay as is unless a left wing back comes through the door. And why would you change it? Especially the back 3, 2 clean sheets in 2 games, in the league at least. So I'd keep Jones, Fry and Ayling together 100%. Britton and Silvera remain the only options on either side. And I think we saw with the Millwall game how things changed when we dropped Hackney back into midfield alongside Aidan Morris. They absolutely bossed and bullied the game against Millwall. So I would 100% put Hackney and Morris back together if possible, because I do think we now have more options in the 10s ahead of them. Now, I do think Whittaker will stay in. He did get an assist, of course, but I would like to hope Finn Azaz will be straight in from the off. Of course, got a delicious assist in the last game against Millwall. I think he is a player you simply have to start. So for me, get Finn Azaz in there alongside Morgan Whittaker, see how them two both fare. I guess the worry again is the lack of pace in behind Tommy Conway, who has been a bit more of an isolated figure in this system. I think that's again where the teams differ. Josh Sargent has been involved, he's been scoring. We can't say the same for Tommy Conway, but maybe with a more creative player like Finizaz in behind, that might help. And of course, we then have players on the bench now as well. You could bring in Bergsorg for Conway at some point. You've got Hansen, who could come on and make an impact once again in the 210s. We've also got Sverre Niepen, who of course has signed this week, who could come on for one of the two centre mids. He could come on for one of the 210s. We honestly don't know where he might be best being played in this system as yet. So we've certainly got different options in them areas, but that's probably the starting 11 I would go with. I'd bring in Finizaz for this one. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the two teams fare up against one another, but I do think there's not much between them. Similarities across the board with the formation, with the turnover of players. I think they've certainly looked stronger in certain areas, whereas we've looked stronger in others. It could be a very tight game, and I don't think there'll be much to split them, if I'm honest. For me personally, just from a Boro point of view, I just want us to come away from this game with something, if I'm honest. As much as I would love Boro to win 3 from 3, and that would be a dream scenario, almost unthinkable, really, given the expectations coming into the season. To get 9 points from, Swansea, Norwich and Millwall would be something else. It really, really would. I would still absolutely take a draw in this game, because I think going to the Den and going to Carrow Road, there's no shame in picking up 4 points from them 2 away games, and if Boro can come out of the first 3 with 7 points, I think that's still an incredible turnaround. I think after the Doncaster debacle as well, I think we maybe need to see consistency now from Boro. Start to see that consistency and performance level. If we're not at our best, I'm not expecting us to be as good as what we were against Millwall in the second half. Just still maintain a good level, still be solid defensively. Anything other than that, I think, is a bonus. So if we can come away from Carrow Road with a point, I'd be absolutely over the moon. But I said that last week, and we come away from the Den with all 3, and I was overjoyed. So we'll see if that is the case. But my prediction going into this game, I'm going to say 1 goal apiece. I think it will be a draw, which is better than what I predicted pre-season. I didn't see Boro getting anything from Millwall or Norwich. I have seen enough from us, especially defensively, that we can go to these places and hopefully be solid enough to come away with something. And as I've said on the breakdown, as I've said numerous times this season, what I like about Edwards so far in Boro is we're building from the back, and we seemingly have a solid base to fall back on. I think one of the players, whether it was Hackney or Jones, alluded to this after the game at Millwall. They said, I think it might have been Hackney, the offensive players know that they've got a good base to fall back on if things aren't clicking going forwards, and that's what the hope is for me. If we're not clicking going forwards, if we're not at our absolute best, which is understandable early on in the season, as long as the back 3, back 5 remains solid, it gives us a chance of coming away from places like this with something. So I really, really hope that's the case. I'm going to go Norwich 1, Boro 1. I'd be overwhelmed with that performance, over the moon. Anything else on top of that would be a bonus. And if we were to win, my God, maybe we will start getting a little bit excited about this Boro team. But let me know your thoughts, feelings and predictions in the comments section below. If you're a Boro fan or a Norwich fan, if there's any Norwich fans watching, I'll be very intrigued to hear a little bit more insight on your team. But until next time, like the video, subscribe to the channel for more. We will be back, of course, at the weekend to review whatever happens down at Carrow Road. And as always, if you'd rather listen to these Project Boro previews and reviews on the go, you can do via the link tree in the description, where you can find this very episode on your chosen podcast provider. But until next time, guys, fingers crossed for a good visit to Carrow Road. And until then, I'll see you all in the next one.